Everybody, thank you very much for coming out, and thank you especially to Craig for coming out tonight. And as they mentioned in the introduction, he's written 2 books about Fred, so I thought we could start by just talking about how you found Fred, or how Fred found you.
Yeah, definitely.
I know it was in Afghanistan, but maybe you can tell people about sort of where you were at, what you were doing, and how he came into your life.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, first of all, thank you, Ray, for this honor. I mean, this is so cool to be here and like look around, and I feel, thank you. And just as a thank you to Ray for this, but also for all the amazing work you do as a journalist. This little
Thank you very much.
Fred calendar.
What beach is he on?
This is in Assateague Island in Maryland.
Oh wow!
Where there's wild horses.
Wild horses, yeah.
Yes, he chased the wild horse. Yeah,
that's great. Thank you.
But yeah, I feel very, very blessed, very grateful for just this opportunity, and thank you, Ray, for the honor. When you asked me to do this, it was said, we do these Maine voices. It's like conversations with notable Mainers. I was like, am I a Mainer? Is this part of like a ceremony? Is there later on? Is there going to be like? Do I have to like climb a pine tree and like drink a moxie?
Yes.
I got my sweater. I got my boots. I feel like I'm ready. Whatever happens next. Yeah, I'm ready for my Maine.
Yes, tonight
Mainer
you're
induction.
a Mainer.
Okay. Wow. All right. That's a big deal. All right. But yeah, I found Fred in Afghanistan back in 2010. We won't talk about how long ago that was. But I was expecting a lot when I got there. I was an intelligence collector, a human intelligence collector, which is such a funny job title, but there is human intelligence from time to time, and it was my job to collect it. And I got embedded with a team of reconnaissance Marines, recon Marines there, regarded as our most elite fighters in the Corps, and they don't get sent anywhere nice. And so these guys had already been in country in Afghanistan missions for, sorry, is my beard rubbing on the microphone? Is that bothering anybody? Can you guys hear me okay? All right, must just be me. They'd already been in country for a couple of months. And so I show up and I'm like taking the tags off of my stuff. Speaking of that, all the tags are off my sweater, right? Yeah. All right, okay. And I'm just trying to fit in and keep up with these guys who like really just have everything kind of dialed in, and they don't know who I am. I'm alone, attached to them, and my first mission was into an area outside of Marja, and we spent like 30 days just kind of chasing down a bunch of Taliban who were really making lives really difficult for the people that were there, and I kind of earned my spot with them. They could see that I could keep up, and anybody that they didn't kill, I could talk to. And sorry, that's graphic, but it's true. A little graphic for a Tuesday, sorry. But and we come back to Camp Leatherneck, which it's so bizarre. We would spend like 30 days out, and there's no bases where we were going. We were just making our own little bases as we would go, just fill sandbags and take houses that we could from as we were chasing the Taliban around. And so you go from just these really Spartan conditions with you don't even have running water. Everything you're eating and drinking you're carrying to back to Camp Leatherneck via helicopter, and it's like there's Wi-Fi and like a coffee house, and you can call home whenever you want. Like it's just bizarre. And every place you walk into, everybody's just going from the only reason people are outside on Leatherneck is because they're on their way to another building. It's like air conditioning to air conditioning, and so it's really bizarre. But we go back and we start getting briefed on where we're going next after the Marja thing. And I'll never forget that first brief where the intelligence analyst is sitting us down, and it's all these recon guys who have been in the war on terror since the beginning, most of them. And they'd seen their share of stuff. And I'm looking as this intelligence analyst is describing the conditions in Sangin, where we're going next. All of those guys were nervous, like hearing what things were like for the British Marines that had been there before them, and for some infantry Marines that were losing like 7 to 10 Marines a week killed in action.
Wow.
and and they weren't even where we were going. They were like in an arguably safer kind of area, and we were going to be going north of them, right into the Taliban's kitchen, and there was no support, no bases established. Like we would have to establish a house right away. And
How many of you guys were
like 50,
Wow.
50-ish, and so. Like one of the, just to really hammer it home, they were expecting every platoon. So there's 3 platoons, and they're typically around 15 Marines, and they were expecting each platoon to take at least 6 to 7 casualties, and at all times you needed to have an empty duffel bag with you, so that if that Marine next to you got hit, you could take their gear off and put it in something, or if you got hit. They could take your gear off and put it in that duffel bag that you were carrying. And so that's what we were preparing for. We weren't preparing for Fred. You could have never prepared for Fred. We insert and we spend the first 7 days really just fighting for our lives, quite literally. The Taliban had the numbers on us. They had the terrain, familiarity. They had historical fighting positions that they'd been fighting from since the Russians, and they had our location dialed in within hours, and were raining down on us with mortars and RPGs, recoilless rifles, and they were attacking in small units, which was something that, to my knowledge, nobody had really seen at this level. I mean, there was small man teams of Taliban supporting each other and attacking our position and then retreating and then attacking again. Typically, they would attack you with something dynamic like a rocket or an IED, and then some small arms fire, and then they'd scoot, But these guys had the resources and the experience to really try to engage with us, and they seemed convinced that they could run us off that hill. And the first 7 days were really just holding on to that little piece of land, and in the middle of that, I'd look over my shoulder and I'd see this dog trotting around like he was at the Westminster Kennel Club, It was just the funniest thing. It just didn't make sense, It was just I'm cleaning my gun and getting some water, and in between, engagements, and there he goes, just pop, 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 with a piece of food in his mouth or a stick or something, and it's just what? And then you go back to doing what you're doing, and then after that first week, things kind of calmed down. The Taliban got the message that we weren't going anywhere, and that was when I really got the opportunity to get kind of close to Fred. Yeah.
And what brought you guys together, or what? Did he just all of a sudden come to where you guys were?
No, yeah, it was time. Once things calmed down, and I didn't have to do Marine stuff, shoot my gun, and it was time to do intelligence guy stuff. And so I had a computer, and I get my computer out and I start typing away, trying to get, because I'm observing tactics and things that the Taliban are doing that is valuable information. I want to get that back, and so I'm starting typing away, and I see this tail periscope across the top of my screen, as I'm trying to write. And there's a theme here. With Fred distracting me from writing, but that's maybe I could explore that a little later. But there was that dog again. And it was what, does he know where he is? What is this guy's deal? And I put my computer down, and I had a bag of beef jerky, and I grabbed some, and I didn't really think it through, just started walking towards him. And, I'm so lucky that I get to tell this story at speaking events all over the country, and this is always the part where I kind of pause, and I remind myself and everybody that, I did not have a dog growing up, but I really wanted one. And if I had access to PowerPoint when I was a kid, every night after dinner I would have been the top 10 reasons Craig needs a dog. I would have had charts and everything. I would have sold it so hard, and but I still did. I campaigned. And I kept getting the classic fatherly, just wall of a response that there is no coming back from. That is like if you get a dog, I'm going to have to take care of it. Like, end of story. Like, you're too busy, you're a kid, you don't get it. Like, it's too much responsibility, I'm going to have to do it. And I could never quite get past that. But I tried. The best thing I could think of was there were neighbors' dogs. All of my neighbors had dogs. So I bought a leash with my own money because it felt like I needed my own leash. I don't know why. And I would go to the neighbors' houses after school and walk their dogs for free just to prove that I could handle the responsibility. Wow. And I was like, this will show them I can do it. And after another spirited campaign, post-dinner presentation, I'm sitting on the stairs listening, to my parents talk, and I heard my dad say, we don't need to get him a dog. He's walking the neighbor's dogs. Totally backfired. So, here I am, a grown man. It's arguable, but I'm in Afghanistan as a Marine, and there's this kid in me that always wanted a dog that's just like, yo, dog. And I'm walking towards him, and I got about from here to that speaker, and I got my first real good look at him. And he didn't look so good. He was covered in bugs. His fur was matted. You could see his ribs. You could tell he'd been on his own his whole life. And he wasn't like a puppy. He was, he looked like at least a year old, maybe older. And because he had all his big dog teeth, and he's kind of eyeballing me. And I mean, I'd like to say that when we got to Afghanistan, you get a brief about all the things you can't do, which is weird at war. But one of them was don't approach the stray dogs. And I'd like to say that was in my head, but it wasn't. It was really just more of like, is this the right thing to do? Like, am I going to put myself and the other Marines and this dog at risk by approaching it? And it was kind of the devil and the angel on my shoulder, and I started to turn around because I was like, yeah, like, leave him alone. And then I heard this little sound, this like thump, 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 and it was his tail. Uh-huh. And he was wagging his tail. Yeah. And I was like, what? Like, this dog, again, like he has no reason to wag his tail at anybody. He's hot and hungry. He's covered in these weird bugs. He's all alone, and he's like wagging his tail at a stranger. Like, he should be like, it didn't make sense. He has every reason to be mistrustful, and it's like he's waving. He's like, hello, like hope, like a little bit of hope, And so I get a little closer, and I kind of hold the jerky out to him, and he surprised me again, just as gently and kind of politely as he could. He took the jerky with his front teeth and chewed it. He didn't snatch it like some certain labs do. Jody Hardman is here. Dog named Stella, everybody. They're not here to defend themselves. I was just so blown away. I mean, the only thing that could have surprised me more is if he had pulled out a napkin and like wiped his mouth. He let me rub. I gave him some rubs, and it was like, I mean, I assume we're all dog people here, yeah? Right. And thank you for leaving your dogs on a Tuesday to come here. It's very difficult. I know. We have one of our dogs with us, and that was in the contract. That's ironclad. We at least get one dog. Ruby's here, everybody. And maybe we'll get her up on stage later. She's very, very shy. But, I couldn't believe his response to me. And being dog people, you all get it. Like, I mean, in that moment with him, after giving him that jerky and rubbing him a little bit, like, and just talking to him, I wasn't a Marine thousands of miles from home. I was just a kid with a dog, But I did kind of snap back into reality there for a second. It was like, wait, okay, this is magical, but like, I don't want to push it. I don't know how the other guys are going to feel. I don't want to assume too much about this dog. And like, I stood up and I was like, I'm going to give him some space. And I started walking back to my stuff. And the damage was done. I felt a little poke at my heel, and I looked down, he's right on my heel, and he's like, where are we going? I know there's more jerky somewhere, and he follows me back to my stuff, and this is how he got his name. So there's a whole kind of story with this. Everything with Fred is a story, so buckle up. But another Marine was watching, and his name was Matt, and Matt Marsh, and he passed away not long after this, but he's an amazing guy, EOD Marine. And he said, "It looks like you made a friend." But I misheard him. I thought he said, "Hey, he looks like a Fred." And I was like, "Okay, Fred, we'll call him Fred, like whatever." I had no idea. I just named my first dog. and so Fred, now the dog is now Fred. He follows me back to my stuff. And I found some water and poured him a bowl of water. And another amazing guy named Jim, we called him Jimmy Pots and Pans. He was our corpsman, and we called him that because he was like just had whatever you needed on him at all times. He was just like clattering around. And he had these tweezers that were actually meant to pull out like shrapnel out of wounds and stuff. And he had these huge tweezers. And he's like, "Let's get these bugs off of him." And I was like, "Yeah, it sounds like a great way to get bit by a dog today, Jim. Let's go for it." And so I kind of hold Fred between my legs, and Jim grabs these bugs. They were like flying ticks. They look like the size of M&Ms, and they're just like all over him, in his hide, and he couldn't really get to them. And, yeah, they're really rough. Just some Jurassic bugs in Afghanistan. Jim grabs one and pulls it, and pulls a little Fred hair with it, and we both were like, "What's he gonna do?" And he just sat there and was like, "Yo, all right, keep going, please. There's more." And we pulled bug after bug after bug. And once he was bug free, he sniffed out my sleeping bag and went over and did the little nest thing they did, made a mess of it, and passed out. And was like, "There,
Wow.
all right." And then from that moment, he came on patrols with us. I mean, he went everywhere with us.
How long was he on the mission with you guys?
Yeah, so that was the beginning probably of the second week, and so there was another 3.5 weeks of heavy operations out of that little compound that we had commandeered, and patrols started probably that night, and Fred came on patrols with us in the beginning there, and the tricky thing for me, tricky is one way of putting it, was there's 3 platoons going out. So there's one platoon that's like kind of resting, but they're on QRF, quick response. So they're hanging out close to their gear in the compound. Another platoon is patrolling, going out all night on a mission, and then the third platoon is on watch, so like up on the towers, on the walls, watching the perimeter. And so, but there's only one human intel guy. So I'm going patrolling every night. And I'm not complaining, but it was exhausting. And because if I let them go out without me and something happened, then on top of whatever happened to those guys or whatever they witnessed, now they have to come back and tell me about it. And instead of me being there to witness it myself. You know what I mean? And I just didn't want to put those guys through that. Like if they lost a buddy, if they saw something horrific, I didn't want to make them come back and then like tell the intel guy about it. So I just went. And so Fred went too. And like, I'll never forget that first night. The thing with Sangin was they had us so dialed in, and their IED game was so strong. Like they put an IED belt around our compound to try to restrict our movement, because they figured out as soon as we would take fire all day, they would shoot at us all day, and we would try to track their movements. And then as soon as the sun went down, we would go out at night and patrol in the direction of wherever we took fire from. And so they wouldn't really mess with us at night, because they knew we could kind of dominate the night with all of our gear. So if we were going, if our compound was here and we were going somewhere that was 2 miles, east of us into the green zone, into the Taliban territory, we wouldn't just go east. We would go 3 miles south, and then it would just do like a big, on paper it just looked insane, like just to go all this extra way to get to somewhere that, you don't even know if there's going to be anything worth seeing when you get there, and then going back the opposite way and coming back, just making a big square, and then keeping track of those routes so you don't touch the same ground twice.
Wow.
And then also making sure you're cutting through cornfields, you're using canals, you're taking anything. If you have the choice between like a little path and going through a bog, you're going through the bog, because they're not going to be in there putting IEDs in that bog, And so it was just.
And Fred, with his little legs, would go
So that first
10 miles or whatever through bogs and
that
everything
first
else?
night. I mean, I think he thought we were nuts because that first night we pushed south way far, and we stopped on a ridge, and the guy on point found like the most difficult way down on purpose, and we're all taking a knee, and I remember just looking off into where I'm supposed to be looking, and I feel a poke at my hip, and it was Fred. And he had been with us the whole time, but off in the distance, kind of like hurting us. And then he pokes me, I give him a rub, and then he goes to the next guy, and he pokes him, and they give him a rub, and he was like hurting the whole patrol. Wow. And then we go down that ridge, and we go right into a cornfield, and he was like, "What are you doing?" And he marched around the perimeter of the cornfield and would wait for us to pop out the other side. But we would go, the corn there is like walking through hair. It's like that. And so we're just trying to, navigate our way through this field. And Fred would be waiting on the other side. Like, you guys are weird.
And do you remember sort of how it felt for you? Like you said, all of a sudden you were a kid who had always wanted a dog, but you were a Marine who'd already seen all kinds of horrific stuff, and your life was in danger every day. But to have Fred with you, did that, I don't know, change your perspective or make you look at things any differently than you had been before in that position?
Maybe. I think it kept me and all of us kind of grounded because there's nothing. I hope that with my books and with tonight with my talks and everything that I do with this story, I hope that nobody comes away feeling like I'm trying to glorify war. Because there's nothing human about it. Like there's a reason that boot camp especially in the Marines, is the way it is. They need to reprogram you to be able to do the things that we do, and not just the conditions and the stress of everything, but just like combat. It's not normal, but having a dog there like Fred, specifically like Fred, because a lot of units have dogs, but they're military dogs, and they're fantastic, but they're a part of war. Fred was this little cartoon character that was just like, it just kept us so in touch with innocence and joy and love and the things that life is really about, and that, was not certainly wasn't something that we were aware of at the time. But looking back, obviously that's what he was doing. That's why he was there, so we didn't go too far down that path, down that road.
And when you decided to take him home, I don't know, what kinds of things were you risking? In terms of were there rules? There must have been rules about things like that in the Marines, taking animals from a combat battle zone.
Yeah, there's definitely rules. But at the same time, it's like you trained us to do all this stuff and like push boundaries, and especially in intelligence school, it's all about the gray area, which, is weird, but, what did they expect? It's like, I'm gonna find a way, to break those rules. If I think they're dumb, and if I find something that if I find myself in a circumstance that I feel it's justified to bend those rules or just completely break them, then I will.
Was there one moment when you knew you had to take him home with you?
Yes. So my biggest thing, I never really planned on making the military like a career, so I didn't really care if I got in trouble. I got yelled at all the time. I wasn't a very good Marine when it came to a lot of that stuff, and so maybe a good intelligence guy. But I was more worried about Fred and being like the ugly American, like trying to take like a koala bear with me from Australia. I wanted it to be very clear that like this is what I'm supposed to do. And that was tricky because your heart is so powerful, and like of course I wanted him to come, but I almost needed to have nothing against my dad, but he's an amazing guy. But he's a very rational guy, and I needed like my dad's voice in my head, like don't do this, and why do this? why risk this? You know, and I could hear him at times, like, you know, make sure this is what you're supposed to do. And my dad's a big part of Fred's story, and I love you, Dad, if you're watching. And this is live streaming, so it's fun to think about who could be watching. But the consequences for me were, you know, standing at parade rest, getting yelled at by some first sergeant, and maybe some paperwork. For Fred, it was death. They would have killed him on the spot. And so it needed to be very clear that this is what I was supposed to do. Yeah.
When you say they, the military?
The military, yeah. Military police.
They would have just put him down?
Yeah,
Wow.
for sure. And I mean, yeah, there's no question about it. I mean, taking him from Sangin, the Wild West, to Camp Leatherneck would be like, it's like almost like the equivalent of like taking that koala bear from Australia and putting it in here. Like, everybody's gonna notice. There's a koala bear up on the roof. You know, like it's really hard to hide at something like that in a place like that. I mean, I was getting yelled at. I'd only been in Afghanistan like 2 weeks, and I got yelled at for like my mustache. Like, wow. And it was pretty awesome mustache, but like it was like that level of, you know, of scrutiny to your uniform, to your appearance. Right. You know, so it was a huge risk. Yeah.
And so you said that you wanted to make sure that you felt like you were doing the right thing. What convinced you?
Fred did. Fred, you know, the first thing was, so that compound that we were in, the Taliban had that dialed in, like I said, and so we couldn't get picked up there by helicopter when it was time to go. So we had to break down that compound, which really just meant slashing the sandbags and making sure we didn't leave anything good behind for the Taliban, and push way out into the desert where it was wide open, where we could see like for miles around us, and make sure that they weren't going to sneak up on us with an RPG or something to try to take out the helicopters. Because there's 3 helicopters coming, and they're just big targets. And so the first kind of gauntlet Fred had to run was that patrol, because it was the middle of the night. We really quickly broke down everything, put all of our stuff on, and we just marched into the desert in the middle of the night. And I remember looking around, and I didn't see him. I didn't see him anywhere. And I thought maybe, like, you know, we had like a little fire going, and guys were throwing junk, like food and stuff in there. Like, maybe he just was like, sweet, there's a bunch of food here, I'm gonna hang out, you know. And going into the desert was, for a dog like Fred, and for any dog, would be risky, and especially at night. There's nowhere for him to hide. You know, in the other direction, it was, you know, where we were patrolling was canals and cornfields and trees and buildings. Like, this was just wide open. So it's very, you know, probably intimidating for a dog to just set out into that direction, even if he's with us. And so we pushed all night, I don't know how many miles and miles into the desert, and found another little, like a pasture with some walls, and we took up in there, and I didn't see Fred. He didn't come with us, and I kind of fell asleep on my pack, and I woke up, and there were 2 guys up on the wall watching the perimeter, and they're like, "Craig, get up here," and I get up there and I get my binos and I look. And often it was like homeward bound, and off in the distance there's this like little like dust cloud, like like just coming through the desert, and it's Fred, and he's just trotting through this desert sun. You know, the sun's coming up, you know, behind him, and I mean, I could see it so clearly in my head, and I couldn't believe it. And he comes trotting in the compound, like barking at everybody, like, "Where'd you guys go? Like, what's going on?" You know, and the other thing was all these guys, all these recon guys. When you talk about rule breakers, they're on me like this whole time. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, you're intel. Like, you could do anything. Like, you're spooky. You know, like this is what we think. You should, like, you know, we drug him and we like put him in a bag. And, like, blah, blah, blah. They had all these ideas, you know, like and I was like, yeah, guys, this is a great idea, but like again, like, it's all on me. Like, once we get back to base, like, you guys are going to be in the wind, and I'm going to have this dog. Like, what, you know, and so once he did that, once Fred trotted into that compound, they're all looking at me like, "All right, dude, like, what's the plan?" And they all start peppering me with questions again, and I grabbed Fred, I just sat him down and I was like, all right, buddy, like if this is what we're supposed to do, one more thing, I need one more thing. If you follow me to the helicopter, I'll know this is what's supposed to happen. And I'll have my duffel bag that we all had on us. And you remember why we were supposed to have those. And I'm proud to say nobody needed them. We walked everybody out of there. And I'll have my duffel bag and I'll stuff you in it and we'll go from there, you know. And just a quick sidebar about the guy that is the reason we walked everybody out of there. He's a big part of the book. His name is Mark Schmidt. We call him Top. And he's not here to deflect this praise. But Mark, you need to take your flowers. He is the reason we walked out of there. He was an incredible person and an amazing Marine and leader and just uncompromising in so many of the tactics that we used that kept guys safe, that didn't always make sense, but he stuck to them. And just one of those guys that you're really, really glad he's on our side.
Sure.
And so, yeah, I made that deal with Fred. I was like, this is what is supposed to happen. You know, if you follow me, even just a couple of steps towards that helicopter, I'll know this is what we're supposed to do. And that's one of my favorite parts of the story is like the birds are coming and you can hear the rotors, you know, in the distance, and everybody's ready. And of course, just to raise the stakes, these 53s are huge. It's a CH-53 Super Stallion. It's a massive helicopter. They fly around Brunswick every once in a while. And they kick up a lot of dust because it's one big rotor. And this guy comes down, and it's a brownout. And it's just like, it's a really dangerous situation where you could end up, if you're not paying attention to the Marine in front of you, and they're not paying attention to the Marine in front of them, you could end up walking right into the tail rotor because the ground is uneven, and it's actually not really on the ground. It's still kind of hovering. It just puts that ramp down. So the tail is kind of tilted. It's really, really sketchy, just to make things even more hair-raising. And I've got my friend Dave in front of me, and Top is behind me, and I'm walking through running through the cloud, and I just got my eye on Dave's pack, and I feel that poke again, right at my heel. And I look down, and it's Fred, and he's terrified. I mean, this is not something any of his ancestors ever had to do. But he's right on my heel, you know, and through the dust and the rocks and the chaos. And I start wrestling with the duffel bag to get it out of my pocket, and from behind me comes this big hand, and it's Top, and he grabs Fred by the scruff and lifts him like a jug of milk. And Fred's just hanging there. And he's like, we're doing this. And I was like, okay. And we just stuffed Fred in this duffel bag. And I mean, Top is one of those guys, he says about a dozen words a day, but don't make him repeat any of them. And so we zipped the bag closed, and we both just kind of understood, like, let's make it look heavy. Let's make it look like gear. So he's got one handle, I've got the other. And we're kind of like hunched over. Maybe they think there's batteries in there or radios or whatever. And there's a young Marine air winger who's part of the extract team, and he's down off the ramp, and he's got his gun up, and he's watching us as we run towards the helicopter and watching our backs. And I mean, this kid, he was shiny. I mean, like, it's just so bizarre to be so filthy, and then see this kid with like a bright shade and just bing, like his chin just like shine. And like all of his gear was like so clean. And I remember being like, what, are we the same? Like, who is this guy? And he looks down at the bag and he like starts to say something like, what's in the bag? And Top just, boom, just elbows him right in the chest. Don't worry about it. And we like run up the back of the helicopter. And the other thing I don't know if people care about this or not, but it's not sexy. Like we all have huge rucksacks on, and we're like filthy, and so in these helicopters there's benches, right? But you can't sit in a bench when you have this big ruck on, so the benches are folded up, and we're all just sitting there on the ground, like just with our feet kind of laced through each other's, just packed in there. And Top and I are some of like the last two guys to board, and I've got Fred in this duffel bag, and I sit down, and I've got Fred between my legs, I've got a guy right in front of me, and Top's right next to me, and he gives me this fist bump, and the helicopter starts lifting off, and I look around at all these Marines, they're, you know, tattoos and beards and guns and muscles, but all I see is teeth, because all of them are smiling. 'Cause they know we got, like, word has spread around the bird, like, we got Fred. And so everybody's kind of quietly like,
Wow.
like, you know, like, because right off the bat, if anybody on that extract team that had seen, you know, us put a dog in a duffel bag,
Right.
that's going to make the news, you know.
Yeah,
that's gonna travel around. You know, Recon brought a dog out, you know, saying it, and like that could unravel the whole thing right there. So in a way, that brownout helped us because it clouded. It was like we were wrapped in a shroud of dust as we were stuffing a dog in a duffel bag.
But so you got him in a helicopter, but you still had to get him out of Afghanistan. Was
Yeah,
that
and so-
any easier or different? Or?
No, God. So the easy part, what turned out to be the helicopter. It's just a fun part of the story, and this was really cool with the book to write about because I really got to realize that. Like, yeah, you know, when I was telling the story on our road trip or at dog parks and stuff around DC, telling the helicopter part was always really fun. But you know, it's hard to get into the weeds with people about the guy from Uganda that helped me get Fred out, the British clerk that like got me the paperwork on the down low that I needed, you know, and like all these people so most of them never met Fred, but just heard about Fred and wanted to be a part of his getting him home, you know, and that was much harder than actually getting him on that helicopter. And it was just, so to me, it's such a testament to, you know, people's, you know, desire to help and be a part of something, you know, magical. Fred has a habit of getting people to break rules for him. Is what I'm getting at.
And you've written that, or you've talked about how, I mean, you saved Fred in terms of you got him out of a tough situation, but then you say that he saved you.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about that,
yeah.
about what you were going through once you got home, and
What
how
time?
he saved you.
I can talk about this. So this is something I kind of got into with Second Chances a little bit too, but I really look forward to exploring it more in my third book whenever I get to that. And I mean, I don't know where to start. I mean, like a dog. I'm preaching to the choir with dogs. Like Fred and I's story and like is astounding and incredible. But at the end of the day, it's about that bond, and we all have that with our dogs, regardless of how they came into your life. And when I came home from Afghanistan, I got out of the Marines, and I went back to Quantico. I was stationed in Pendleton in California, back to Quantico to a unit that didn't know who I was, didn't care, and they processed me out within I had a bunch of leave saved up, so I came home and got out of the Marines basically. And within 4 months, I was at a desk working at the Defense Intelligence Agency. And I thought that was fine. I thought, yeah, that's what you do. You come home and you move on. And, you know, the only examples I had were, you know, Vietnam veterans that, you know, I'd met from the D.C. area. And my uncle, I had an Uncle John, who was in the Battle of the Bulge. And his whole unit got wiped out. He was presumed dead, and he was missing in action for 2 weeks. And he just put on a German trench coat and was walking around behind enemy lines for 2 weeks trying to find a U.S. patrol. And that was as much as we knew. And that came, I'm pretty sure I didn't even know that until after he passed away, right? But that was that generation. That was a lot of generations of veterans. That's Uncle so-and-so, and they were in Da Nang, and they don't talk about it, you know. And that's just how it was. And that was strength. And I thought that was strength. And so I thought, yeah, okay, I was in Afghanistan, I saw some stuff, and it was traumatic and awful, but, you know, it's nothing like what those veterans went through in Vietnam and World War II and other conflicts. Like, I'm not going to talk about it, you know, because that would mean that I'm projecting weakness. I'm admitting, you know, defeat. And that didn't work. And I was very alone when I came home, you know, because I had kind of told everybody I was fine, and I was very good at acting like I was fine, and I was very good at using alcohol kind of like pad myself. But this is when the narrator comes on in the story. He's like, things were not okay. Like I really wasn't. And Fred had been where I'd been. And we'd done a lot of the same things, but at the end of the day, he was still just my dog, which is so much. And he was so constant and consistent. And I was in this desk job 8 hours a day, just feeling like nobody would even notice if I showed up or not. And I'd come home and Fred would just look at me like so happy, to go run around the Capitol, and explore and sniff and smile at people. And that was like a balloon that was just keeping me like just barely above the treacherous kind of water. But I held, like holding onto that leash was like holding onto a balloon that was like keeping me afloat, and the biggest way that he rescued me was with this story, was telling this story, because he gave me permission to talk about it and to write about it. And in doing so, he connected me with a version of myself that I didn't think was any good. I barely graduated high school. And like C's and D's, mostly D's. And I worked really hard for those. But if making friends and making people laugh was a class, that would have been my 1A. Like, I never missed a chance to get on stage and do like a skit or run the pep rally or like do the morning announcements, like anything I could do to get on stage and like in front of a crowd. Like, I loved it. But that, for whatever reason, in my school and where I grew up in the Beltway, it wasn't seen as like marketable or valuable. It was all about what was on your report card. And next thing I know, I'm out of the Marines. I have this dog and I have this story, but I'm not supposed to talk about it, right? Because that's what veterans do. We come home and we don't talk about stuff. But I have this dog that is so handsome and unique, and people keep asking, what kind of dog is that? And it's like this, like, what do I do? Like, there's this like 17-year-old of me that's like, tell the story. It's like, But then the rest of me is like, dude, no, you don't talk about this stuff. Because if you talk about Fred and where he's from, you're going to have to talk about Justin and Sean and like, the friends you lost at combat and the things you saw, and people will like, think you're weak for talking about it, for showing emotion. And so for a really long time, when somebody would ask what kind of dog Fred was, because that's the number one question at dog parks, so what kind of dog is that? I would just make up a breed. I would just say he's a pocket wolf, That was my go-to. I had some other ideas, but that was like the go-to one. It was like, oh, he's a pocket wolf. And people would be like, oh yeah, that's cool, I've heard of those. They're like, oh, he's like a husky corgi. Like, yeah, sure. Yeah. And I move on, and it worked for a while, but, and it also helps at dog parks. We always try to like guess the breed, right? So people would always, make their guesses, and I would just let them be like, yeah, you're right, and move on. But one day, a friend asked, she wasn't a friend at the time, she's a very, very dear friend now, but a person asked, what kind of dog is that? And they didn't follow it up with their guess. Maybe they didn't read their dog park etiquette. They didn't follow it up with like a guess at the breed, and the question just kind of hung there in the air. And something in me, the 17-year-old, was like, move over. I got this. And I just told the story. And I remember walking home from that. Damn it, sorry. I remember walking home to our apartment after that. I just like let it fly. I just told the whole story of Fred. This poor person was probably like, I probably made her late for stuff, Because, it's like a 10-second answer, and I'm giving her like a 30-minute story. But I'm walking back to our apartment. I'm looking down at Fred like, you did it, you little jerk. You pulled it out of me. And, but then from then on, like I anytime anybody asked what kind of dog that was, I let it fly. And I'm sure I made a lot of people late for stuff because, it's like this very casual question, and here comes this guy with this amazing story. And the next thing I know, I go to the dog park, and people are bringing their friends with them after work to like meet Fred and like, you got to hear this story. And I've got like, like a dozen people, on benches and stuff at the dog park in DC, while Fred is like chasing squirrels and like, trying to be, the biggest, tallest dog at the dog park. I'm like holding court. And a part of me that I buried that I didn't think was any good, started to really come back alive. And it led me to talking about my dog all the time, which is I highly recommend. Yeah.
I think we can open it up for questions, if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, I'd love that.
We have a microphone over here. If you put your hand up,
your hand.
we'll get a microphone to you.
Yeah.
I won't need a mic. Retired Army.
There you go.
Craig, what did the Marines do when they kind of found out about Fred after?
Right. Yeah. Good question. Nothing. They know how to pick their battles in the Marines. And we've done book signings on Parris Island, at the Pentagon, which I thought maybe was a trap. It's like, we were like walking in, we were like, wait a minute. The NSA, which was amazing. Like, they took us into like the highly classified, like watch room that the people are like manning computers 24 hours a day. They couldn't leave their station to come hear me talk to the agency, so they let me and Fred and Nora go in, and I gave like a quick little chat, little version of the story, and then Fred puked in that room. Yeah.
But they said they were going to frame that carpet.
Yeah, they said like they loved it. They were like, that's amazing. It was just a little water burp, like he just had too much water. And maybe he was a little nervous because it's such a sensitive area. And just kind of like, bleh. But they said they were going to cut it out and frame it. And we'll never know if they did or not. It's like the most secure place in the world. A better answer to your question is when you write a book as a veteran, and this is or probably any like government kind of stuff, you have to submit the final manuscript to the Pentagon for review to make sure you're not giving away, secrets or you didn't smuggle the dog over like multiple countries. So I submitted the manuscript to the Pentagon, and that was their chance to be like, you did what? And they sent it back in like record time, and we're like, we love this. Don't change a thing. You're fine. So we're good. Yeah. And just for everybody that's not familiar, one of the best kind of natural arcs of the story of Fred is, I did all this. I got him on the helicopter. I hid him in plain sight, lied, cheat, steal to get him tactically acquire. We don't say steal. Get him on a plane back to America. He flies from Afghanistan to Pakistan to Bahrain to Germany, lands at JFK, right? It's the closest airport I could get him to. And guess who goes up and gets him and takes care of him for 4 months until I get home? My dad. So, Dad, you were right. If I ever got a dog, you would have to take care of it. So, that I love that so much. So this is the stuff you can't make up. And they had whatever, no matter what he says, they had a great time together. Him and my dad and my stepmom took great care of Fred, and Fred put them through it a little bit. He didn't really, know what, inside was, So if he wanted to go outside, he would just walk up to the wall and sink a fang into the drywall and just rip drywall. So he thought I'll just go through here, and then he started to figure out, he's like, okay, doors. We go through doors. So we go over to the door and just grab the molding and twist and pop the whole thing of molding off and be like, can I get out through here? Sorry, Dad. Yeah.
Anybody else have a question?
Mike?
No question, I love you, buddy.
I love you too, buddy. You're the man. If you don't follow Dog Named Stella, Jody Hartman is here. Does everybody know Stella? Yeah, the Leaf The leaf dog? I got to put you on the spot a little bit, bud. Yeah. Yeah, there's one back here, yeah.
I'm sorry, this is a question about being in country.
Yeah.
You guys are taking these circuitous routes to try and avoid IADs and things like that.
Yeah.
Does Fred avoid IADs? Is he smart enough not to step on?
No, I mean, the only thing I can think is that most of them were they're pressure plates. So it's two pieces, it's like pieces of wood with like sometimes just a gum wrapper. And then if you step on it, you complete the circuit.
He was too light.
He's too light. Because they're making it for us, like a 180-pound Marine with, 80 pounds of gear on.
You guys are scanning and
Yeah.
checking and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only thing I can think of that kept him safe was he just didn't weigh enough. Yeah, and there's a really awful story. This is when we realized how close they had gotten to our position with the IEDs. Was after that first week, things calmed down, and we really knew things were calming down because people started to evacuate their homes and like move towards us and to try to get some safety, try to get out from under the Taliban, because the Taliban were just using them as human shields. They're going into their homes, locking them in rooms, and then shooting at us from their compound. And so this first chance they got, these people were walking out, and this guy and his wife and a donkey, they're walking up the hill right in front, like we're looking down at them, and they're right in front of us, and they step on an IED. And the donkey and the woman go up, and so I mean that's the kind of weight it took, was like something like that, and so they were everywhere, and it's amazing that we all walked out of there. I mean, because we would hear them over the radio. We had guys with gear that could intercept their chatter, the Taliban talking, and they were losing it. They couldn't believe that. Because we would do on these crazy patrols, and we would leave little love notes for them, and just to mess with them. And I'd have my interpreter write these really just very graphic, very very mean things about them, and and we'd leave notes for them all over the place, and they would lose it. Like how did they get here? This is not they're ghosts, and they were they just couldn't believe that we made it through their IED belt. So we're very very, very fortunate. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Is there another one back there?
Sure. It's
Yeah.
Karen. First and foremost, thank you for your service.
Yeah, of course.
Fred, we miss you.
Yeah.
Fred for his service. Your book, Second Chances, the work that you did at the prison with the veterans who were incarcerated, have you been able to connect with any of them?
Mike, you want to stand up?
Oh, Mike.
Callahan, Michael Callahan, everybody. You want to say anything? He's a talker. Come on.
I remember the first time I met you, you came walking in with Fred, and actually at the time, I had MS, and at the time I was in a wheelchair. But it was really neat. We just couldn't figure out what you were doing.
I was just following Fred, man. Yeah.
And well, you came and hung out with us one Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a wonderful bologna sandwich.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it was incredible because while you were searching for your, writing your second book, and I was basically voluntold to help you run that group. And we had a writing group, I don't know. My old roommate, Bobby Craig, was sitting next to me all the time. We just couldn't figure out what all these young bucks were doing, talking to you and everything. But it was interesting because a lot of us talked and learned stuff that we just wouldn't ask each other.
Mm.
You certain rules in the prison you just
Yeah.
don't ask.
Yeah.
And I think one time you asked me about Chet.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, where's Chet? I'm like, he's not around.
Yeah.
So because he was in Supermax, but he's found himself a few times.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was cool to have a chance to talk, and some of the things that we wrote about that, like I said, we all learned a lot about each other that we just never would have had it,
Yeah.
whatever, we just wouldn't have taken the chance to.
That's Fred, man. That's the magic of Fred. He did it to me, too. Thank you, Callie. Thank you, man. I mean, and it wasn't enough. Like, he had so much work to do here. Like, it's just like there's a pattern here of Fred showing me that I'm so wrong about so much. I was wrong about myself. I was wrong about myself and who I am. And I was wrong about the world and how people would react to a guy who cries a lot. And I was wrong about not talking about it, about taking the tough guy route. And it's funny to think about it like that now, because what's tough about ignoring a problem? Right? I mean, that's why I joined the Marines, was to run towards the problems. So why wouldn't I come home and run towards the challenges of coming home, right? It's still a challenge. Doesn't mean it doesn't go away, but he showed me how, and he showed me that what's possible, the people you meet when you do it. And Callie, you're one of those people, Dang it, sorry, man. And I thought I had it figured out with the prison too. I mean, you guys read Craig and Fred and Randy Liberty. God bless you, Randy Liberty asked me to come up and talk to the book club, and I was like, one and done, in and out. I don't want to. I do not want to be in here. And I'm walking in through the parking lot, and Fred's trotting at the end of his lease like, we're going to PetSmart. I'm like, dude, we're going to a prison, man. This is gonna suck. You're gonna hate it. And like, he loved it. I mean, he loved the sliding doors. He loved waiting for the door to open. And he's trotting around. And then there's dogs running around this prison. And there's all these people that are happy to see him. And I'm like, yeah, I guess you might like this a lot. And then it turned out I did too. And I was so wrong about what those guys would offer me, I just showed up and hung out and listened, and but I'll be forever changed by doing so, and I owe that to Fred, and I owe that to the writing group that Mike did a good job of wrangling from time to time, yeah, I mean, there's a trend here with me and Fred just showing me how wrong I can be about stuff. And yeah, I mean, grief is another one of those.
Yeah. Hey, I was going to ask if we have the time for another question.
Yeah.
If anybody...
I didn't read your book, but how did you get from D.C. to Maine?
Oh, good question. Yeah. Fred again. We got Nora and I were living in D.C. and I mean, speaking of amazing people that Fred brought into my life, my amazing wife Nora, who instantly squirms when I bring her up. There she. But we met. I mean, we met because we were talking about our dogs. She had just gotten Ruby, and I wouldn't shut up about Fred, and the book deal came through, and they wanted it quick. The publisher, HarperCollins, William Morrow, they really wanted it fast, and I was like, I can't write this here in D.C. I'll be too distracted. And so I started looking at Airbnbs, and my search just kept leading me north. And I found this place in Maine, in Sullivan, looking over the water, looking at a Cadillac Mountain. And I was like, that's it. And Nora was like, that's really far. And it was. I mean, it was. And it's February. But you said, I mean, she was like, anywhere you need to go, anywhere you need to go to finish this, we'll go. And so I got in touch with the owner. They were like, it's kind of a summer camp, but we'll open it for you. You're crazy enough to get up there. And so we packed up and went up, and it was my first time in Maine was on my way to Afghanistan, and I'd only been to Maine via Bangor in the troop greeters. I had my first lobster rolls in the terminal, and I never forgot those people but at first it was just to finish the book. We never planned on making it home, but I think pretty quickly we realized like Maine is so special and so authentic, and not to rag on my hometown too much, but it's not the most authentic place at times, and it just felt so home, and looking around this room, I feel like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, like looking at all of these people, like you've all been a part of our journey here in Maine, in so many beautiful ways, and like our dear friends from Cape Elizabeth, from Zeb Cove, and Jody and Mike, like another Northern Virginia refugee here, my friend Ryan. Like it's just Maine has made so much sense, but the real reason we moved up here was for Fred, because we'd been living in the city for a really long time, and I'd always wanted to like just be able to open the door and let him go, and you can do that up here, and he went. Fred could have like 20 acres, and he would find the edge of it and want 20 more, and then 20 more, and 20 more. So, yeah, it was. That's. Sorry for all the long answers. I'm a bit of a talker.
Craig, thank you very much for everything. And thank you all for coming out. And I want to thank Craig for doing this.
Oh, thank you guys. Oh, yeah. Thank you.